Five. So welcome to Thursday Nighter November, round one, 4-round tournament this month, and we are very lucky to have I am Nubair back again to give us commentary. Welcome, Nubair.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the November event. Today we are having the round one, and we'll start at looking at games. Currently, we have this position between Howard, Nathan, and Basil. But let's see it from the beginning to understand it better. So it was Karokan defense, and it was and they played classical line. This is known as classical variation. After that, Black takes on e4, knight f6. This is the modern approach in Karokan. Previously, or the main line is to play bishop f5, take the knight, knight goes back, bishop g6, and then knight d7 and so on. Or if we go back to even, let's say, 3, 4 decades back during Capo times, this was also one of the main lines. But nowadays, okay, knight f6 is one of the main lines. Takes. Black does not mind exchanging the knights and making double pawns as he can quickly castle. So that's the logic behind this and get control over this square apart from this. So knight f3, bishop d6, bishop d3, castle. Also, white can play like bishop e3, queen d2, castle in some lines. That's also an option if white is more ambitious. Bishop g4, h3, bishop h5. And bishop is generally very, very good here. c4, okay, knight d7, bishop e3, rook e8. So far, I think everything was good for both the sides still here. Maybe black is slightly doing well because black maintains the pin and the pressure along the diagonal. If white plays bishop e2, then somewhere it's black's victory because the bishop goes to d3 and again comes back. So for that reason, white played g4. However, this move is very hard to justify because it weakens the king. And whatever the reason could be, but g4 cannot be a good move.
Yeah, going for pawn storm here, but not exactly seeing that. He's just going to trade that. White's light square bishop is super active anyways, so probably happy to trade that off and just
Yeah.
try to chip away at that pawn cover after the light square's bishop trade. So be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, an interesting move, knight h4 was played with the idea of maybe going to f5 or taking on j6. So definitely white improves the knight if it goes to f5 or takes the bishop with the knight. But at the same time, white also removes the main defender of the king. So imagine someday if the bishop goes back and queen comes up, it will be very, very difficult to defend as there is no f4 or bishop f4. Rook is taking care of the e3 bishop. This could be dangerous in some line. Maybe, in my opinion, knight f8 was also an interesting option in which you can just try to get knight d6, knight f4, and or even knight d6, knight g6. And for knight f5, just go back to c7. But in the game, bishop g6, bishop d3 was played. Why? Okay, this move is okay, but why I didn't like it that much because now you don't have pawn on g6, which is generally good. Like if you have these 4 pawns, they're really doing good for the king safety and taking control of the f5 square. Just like in Karukan, we take control of these 3 squares. We would also like to take control of the f5 so that the knight never comes to f5 and we don't face any problems. But in the game, uh, bishop d3 followed by g6 was played. Now this definitely weakens some square. Black is still fine or doing well because he has not damaged the king much. He has got 4 pawns. White has got 3. That too like this. So now the knight looks stupid on h4. So this play is also justified. But in general, I would have not created weaknesses on these squares.
So yeah, he's clamping down on knight f5 jump, but you know, weakening some squares in the process, and there were some other plans that create no weaknesses at all. So if you have the choice between the two, might as well go for ones that create no weaknesses.
And here, a very interesting move, a tactic was played after knight f3. Like there was a move here possible, something like knight c5, so that you can. So if I takes, okay, I'll just show it. Knight c5, and the point is, if you take, it's a blunder because you got this check and the queen hangs. And with this move, black gets a tempo. The queen has to be moved now. I don't know where exactly. Let's say queen c2 or something. And now black has again two options. Knight e4, just improving the knight from d7 to e4 in like one move because one move was anyway tempo. And the other option is to go just knight e6 and follow the traditional plan, or even like this. And oops. And then if black gets knight g5, it will be a problem again for instance, let's say rook d1, bishop c7. I don't know. Let's just make some moves. a3, b4 or something like this. Queen d6, b4, and knight g5. So let's say you take on g5. There could be rook takes e3 in some lines. Right now the queen defends the h2. So okay, not knight g5. It's just mate. Bishop g5, g5, and maybe there could be some sacrifice in the e file, and let's say something like this. And let's say you capture with the rook or queen back on f3, and there will be checkmate. Well, this all could be the potential ideas in this setup, but maybe black did not find it immediately in the game. Let's see what happened next. So Basil just tried to make the normal moves in Karukan, where you try to put your queen on c7, rooks to d8, e8, and these moves are a little hard to understand. With this, I don't know what who was really looking forward to, because I don't know how to explain this queen d2 to queen c1. Maybe he wanted something like this on the diagonal, and then maybe he realized that something like this could come at some point, and probably that's why he went to c1, but maybe c2 was better option.
Yeah, and you can't really imagine him playing knight d2, or he probably wants to keep the knight on f3 defending his king. So
Queen c1, knight to f8. So he's going for all the traditional ideas. c5, bishop e7, and now we can see the bishop is not doing much like on e7. Like it was so active bishop. Imagine you could have put the bishop here or here, and then simply queen coming like this and some pressure on the battery. But now the things are disrupted here. Okay, black does get the d5 square. It's very nice. It looks great. If you could put the knight on d5, it will look so great. But it's gonna take some time. Now still there are threats possible like h5 in some lines. And we do see h5 immediately because takes, simply we have queen h3. For takes, we do have this and this. Probably knight g6 is more stronger. And after once the bishop moves, there's a king g7 followed by rook h8.
scary.
Yeah. And if you try to defend like knights here, then f5 foot also would come. So after h5, knight h2 was played, and this is hanging, right? Yeah, and probably there was no defense. Like as a white, you do want to defend the g4 pawn, but there's just no way because you unnecessarily harm the king's safety by playing g4. And at some point, like the amount of move wasted in moving just queen in the last 4 or 5 moves speaks for itself. Imagine if this piece could have been here, maybe knight h2 was possible, or at least if the rook would have been here, the d4 would not have been hanging there. So he just lost this. Bishop e3.
So yeah, that pawn is almost the price to pay for the strange queen d2, queen c1 operation earlier.
Yeah. e1, e8. The white trying to exchange some pieces and try to survive. Maybe this could have been even a good idea. But what I would see so far is black has played really good. I mean, there were some inaccuracies, but still the overall the play of black was still good. Okay, now the finally bishop comes to this diagonal, and once the bishop comes here, it will be very, very good for black. H4. Mm, you can play H4 as a black, but I would suggest to delay it a bit because you can make this move anytime, and white can never take this, almost never, because you do have this move. So maybe you can start with knight e6, try to generate more thrust like bishop f4, and then we have some kind of rook d2 here, which is very, very serious. And this threat becomes more stronger after once the white plays f3. Like the last move was f3, so maybe like this would have been better approach, but he just plays h4. That's also fine. Like ideas like this are now more dangerous. Queen f2. And now, yeah, this becomes a weakness, so this needs to be defended, or maybe something like bishop f4 needs to be worked out. He goes g5, just defending like that. 92. Now these squares are weak. And a blunder. White drops the exchange. And black needs to find some winning plan in this.
Conversion mode. That rook looks pretty strong, so definitely think the exchange is going to be good here, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so potential idea of white is through knight h4, knight e4, so maybe f5 is also possible. Or just maybe start with king d7 so that after knight d4 you can enter rook d1. Let's just show some lines. Something like this could be possible. Queen moves somewhere, and you just try to exchange queens, and it's very easy game for black after this. So maybe something like this is easiest way for black. Just defending the only weakness. And okay, then you try to just break out the pawn chains or try to enter with the open file. All right, let's move to the game between Agam and Miles.
Perfect. Board 2, we have both regular players, Ronan against Miles. Miles has been having some pretty strong tournaments recently, but took a bit of a break last month, and now he's back. So he has been winning some tournaments now and then, so he's definitely one to watch. And Ronan's a strong player as well, plays in the club all the time. Good to see him back. He also has been taking a bit of a break.
And he plays the, I don't know how we call it, but usually B6 is English opening for D4. So maybe the delayed English opening, or if black plays E6 later on, it will be something like Queen's Indian. So,
Yeah, and this is
and
Miles'
okay.
strategy. Yeah, he plays a lot of b6 and a lot of b3 is white.
Mhm.
So it's his home structure.
And this is just like the Queen's Indian, the typical Queen's Indian, where you just play an F6, E6 followed by B6 and Bishop B7. So we got transposed into some kind of a Queen's Indian, where white has played this strange move knight D2 when he had option to go knight C3. But okay, it's playable. Hikaru plays this a lot. Like for example, this setup as white in online games. It's just fine, easy to play. So a5. Okay, this is interesting idea because in the game white took earlier on d5. Now black wants to make most of it. And the idea of a5 is to just go a4 to try to damage the pawn chain. You cannot really go b4 if you take, and the pawns are really bad. Something like a3 needs to be played here, played here. But still, it weakens these pawns. Now they are not protected anymore with each other.
What do you think about knight takes there versus pawn takes? Feels like,
Where knight takes,
yeah, knight takes
instead of,
d5.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Usually, okay, you here black has all the three options because there's no knight on c3. So all moves are playable, but you don't really take with the bishop because you don't want queen c2 e4 to come someday. And usually we just play e5 like castles, c5 like moves, rook e8, knight e4. This is the usual setup which black opts for. But knight d5, maybe Miles wants some tactics here with knight c3, and maybe he wanted to make use of something like this. And another part of this move is it's very hard for white to get e4 because then there's knight f4 coming in.
Got it.
So I would say Miles is playing for some dynamics and hoping for some tactical shots here and there. But if he doesn't get something in like next 5 or 10 moves, it could go very, very bad for him because if white achieves to get this pawn to e4 by controlling f4, b4, and c3, it's going to be difficult for black later on to fight in the center. But okay, he has c5. Let's see what actually has happened in the game.
It also makes me wonder. Since they played knight takes, now we've got knight e4 as a potential option, and knight takes d6 comes with check. So even if we're, yeah, I guess he'll just drop it back. But
But yeah, this is also a possibility where white can simply improve the knight. And right now it's possible. But okay, he played a5 and a3. So, and after castle, there's one more point. After knight e4, we have this thing. Now there's no check. So maybe, as I said, Miles is just hoping for the tactical possibilities here and there. And in the game, this happened, castle, castle, and f5. So he's already looking for something like this, maybe, or just to prevent e4.
okay. Is the e5 square going to be important now?
Yeah. And as you spotted, the knight could attack the bishop now because there's no pawn on d5. It could be the f5 or c4. You can't prevent both of them. And once the bishop goes back, now there's a serious problem on e5 square. Like the knight jumps to e5 and maybe they trade one of them. And then the bishop would simply go to f3, get e4, rook e1. Looking good for white now. Queen f6, knight e5. Maybe something like rook d8 was better option. But okay, I don't like bishop e5. Just giving up the bishop, it's too much. And yes, Miles is very, very clear about his plan. He wants to keep on playing tactically, some tricks here and there. And he's doing lots of threats, so probably something will work out at some point. But right now, bishop f3 defends
Yeah,
everything.
I was thinking bishop f3. Just got to play that. I'd play that in a second without thinking almost. But okay,
Oh, as I said, something will work out at some point. And
nice
one loose
tactic.
move from white, he could have gone here or something like this. Or anything like, but not queen c2 because queen c2 there's knight b4 coming in, and now you have to play queen e2. But then there's a bishop a6. A drop
Ouch.
exchange.
Yeah, so kind of realizing that bishop is pinned, so it's want to try to keep the queen in contact. So probably maybe queen e2 would have been a little bit better development to start instead of queen c2.
And here comes the blow. He goes rook take 2. Boom.
Wow.
I'm not sure is it working or not, but looks very, very great because queen d2, bishop f3, g3. There's simply queen g4 coming in, and or queen h5 coming in. There are two options for here. So queen h5 is not so great because h4, queen here, you have got this move. And some chances for white to defend checkmate. So probably queen g4, and now this is a forced checkmate. I don't see any difference. You can go queen d7, but you only get a pawn there. Maybe you have to sacrifice a queen to defend checkmate. Any other options are not really working.
So
h4, there's a queen h3. So yeah, it's game over. Rook d2, brilliancy.
nice. Miles channeling Morphe here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As I said, like if you give so many threats, some of them works out.
So
Uh,
where did this kind of first go wrong for white. It seems kind of just like queen c2 was one move wonder. Outside that, it seems pretty decent, right?
So white is left with no other option but to sacrifice queen. He gets a bishop, a piece, and a rook in return. So it becomes playable because after rook b2 there is still 8x b4, and material wise you don't lose so big material. You are still running with rook and bishop. But white is just dropping all the pawns like rook b2, rook b3, e5 is weak, and so it's just going to be game over. But he played knight g3 in the game, little bit surprising. Okay, bishop d4, c5. I understand bishop c3. Maybe he just wants rook c2, and the bishop is not having any good squares. Maybe bishop e1 will be forced. Okay, so white finds a tactical shot now, something to play for. And wait a sec, is the rook trapped here after bishop d1? Rook d2, there's bishop c3, so he must play rook c1 for bishop d1. Okay, takes. And now luckily knight escapes back, but still there are no escape squares for knight. Something like bishop c3 and or bishop b2, bishop c3, and bishop c2 may trap the knight. Let's see. And this is the live portion on the board, so maybe bishop c3 or bishop a1 would be played with the idea of bishop c2, e2, and rook d1. But
Can you
always
just
black can play this.
yeah? Can or in desperate circumstances, couldn't you just play c4 and use that to clear a square for knight c5?
Yeah, even the sacrifice is possible. Sometimes you can even play f4, because one interesting line I just saw is just like, let's say f4, and let's say white tries to pin it with the idea of rook d1. You may even just play after a, and the same ideas like there's g3 and okay, queen g4, and there's no defense for this. So even f4, f3 is a tricky idea. Agam is just one more shot to get bishop back to f1. So this is the live position on the board where Agam is thinking what to do with the bishop. Not much
Yeah,
options.
it feels like
Maybe
if I was white, I'd almost want to take my e5 pawn just off the board, but
maybe
restricting my own bishop for any swindle chances.
yeah. Ideal would be maybe bishop to c3 and bishop to e2, and then to try to get bishops like this. But let's say bishop c3 also, because b5 you can capture at least a pawn. You would lose this one, but okay. Let's say you play bishop e2, black plays c4, you capture, and okay, at least can play rook b1 and try to generate some threats with rook b7, rook b8. The king is a little bit awkward. Black has to play h6, then you can capture something. And just a sample line, let's say takes, bishop goes back, bishop attacks this. So knight d3 again to defend this. And something like check, and this could be possible someday. But again, black is just in time to get e5 and takes. There's a d2. But wait, there's a rook d7 and queen c6. No, not yet. Okay, I went so fast, so let me explain one thing one by one. So the point was to get the pawn and get the knight. So c4 was played. Now takes. And okay, bishop takes pawn, knight takes e5 is there. So rook b1, trying to generate some threats here, some perpetual maybe, or try to bring the king out so that we could make most of it. For that reason, h6, bishop takes e5, knight takes pawn, so that we open the diagonal. Bishop comes back, let's say, knight needs to be defended, otherwise this would be hanging. So knight d3, and now this is also possible. And we also have rook b8. Why rook b7? Because we want the king on h7 so that we can make use of these ideas and some tricks. Otherwise, someday black could just go like 26 and give up a pawn. So check, forcing king in the corner. Also, this would be helpful for pushing this pawn forward. Now e5, the idea was to take and go bishop e5. But then I saw d2, rook here, and queen e6. So after rook g7 check, king h8, and it works for black as this pawn is winning. You do have this move. You capture here. He captures and it's a checkmate. One of the not so forced but semi-forced line and interesting way in which the game could also end if people have missed something. Pretty much forced after bishop c3. Okay, so in the game, something like this is already no, this is the analysis. Okay, wait a second. So and okay, they are going for the other line. So f4, bishop here, and now f3 is coming. So it's going to be checkmate in this way.
Yeah, and if I have the queen against all these pieces, I'm very happy to get an attack going. Much rather win with an attack than try to clean up pawns and win that way.
We just like discussed this line and everything is same happening. And that's why we came with the conclusion that knight needs to attack from e2 and so that white have some chances. But now it just came over. You have to play g3, queen comes in and there's just no difference. Only difference I could see is this, but then it also fails to one funny checkmate. If you play rook g1, there's knight f2 mate.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be nice if this what happens on the board. But probably he will resign soon.
Yeah, nice game by Miles, and kind of shows you just slip for one moment and things can all kind of spiral out of control. Queen c2.
Indeed, a very good attacking game here by Miles. Um, let's move to the next board where Robert was playing against Dania. And we already have the result here. Daniel won. Daniel wins with black pieces.
Wow, it's a pretty big upset. Daniel is playing the Premier section, and I believe he used to play the Open section, so it looks like he's moving up to Premier. And Robert is a lot higher rated traditionally, so this was a pretty big upset.
And also he beat him by playing the Scandinavian before d5, and which is not a good opening. So maybe a surprise here for Robert, and seems to be it worked out.
Yeah, Robert always goes for sacrifices, so we'll see what he did this game.
Like he could have simply developed the bishops. Uh, for instance, let's say bishop of not here exactly because 95, but in general, just develop the bishop instead of going 95. Maybe bishop d2, bishop d3, bishop, anything is fine, even h3, preventing bishop g4. But instead, he went for moving the same piece twice and attacking the queen. But then queen is really good on here, and the knight is actually now bad compared to on f3. So he tries to do something this side and like this improves the knight. A good position for Daniel out of the opening. Maybe something like bishop b4 or bishop e7 was better compared to bishop d6. Because as a black, you don't really give this bishop. Like it's a good bishop, you got pawns in the light square. So one should not give bishop like this. You either play bishop e7 or try to work out bishop b4 if you could. But giving bishop like this is not good. Now it looks better because uh, the not so good knight is not anymore on the board, which has captured the good bishop. Also, the a4 a5 plan seems to be worked out as Robert managed to create a hook over there. And let's say if he manages to exchange one pair of knight, then it will be a good bishop versus bad knight because very soon c3 c4 will come and the knight has to be kicked. Knight will be kicked. But let's see what happens. f4. Mm, this is creating extra weaknesses. This is not really a plan because black can just play castle. Event f5. Simply rook e8. And now Robert tried to exchange queens. Takes. Even rook d8 was an option here, but he just went for endgame because this pawn is weak. If he captures, then rook e6 and e5 is lost. So rook here takes. And after g6, rook g5, there's h6 at least. So he captures first. The idea is to go knight c7, rook g5. And h6 was not played immediately, though it was possible. Like, for example, like rook g3, knight e5, and this would be a blunder because there's an f3 check. So it wasn't hanging directly, but indirectly there was just like rook e3, and now you attack the knight. Black needs to play f6, and bishop c3 comes in. So you do drop a knight because if you move the knight, you lose a rook. So black needs to find something like rook c8, and something like this could come, where
What's what's your thought on that a6 pawn in a rook endgame? Is that a
yeah. So
liability or
in this part,
strength?
I'm just trying to calculate something like this, but black would be always fine because he can capture, let's say, and go behind the passed pawn. And as written in the books, this will also be another drawn rook endgame. So maybe if I wanted, maybe I could have forced draw here with all these captures. So instead, black went knight c5, not giving white any chance, and just looking at the possibility of knight e4, which will improve the knight position and also keep the pawn in awkward position. So that you don't have bishop c3, as knight e4 is a fork with a double attack. The rook g4 was played. But in general, even if white just captures like this, it's not that easy for black to win such positions. Let's say capture. White has got this asset like an advanced pawn, and if white just try to push the pawns in this way or something like this, it will be difficult for black to win because white has got an extra pawn, which is and a bishop. And bishop and pawn, good bishop and a pawn is always equivalent to rook in endgames, or even better at times. So maybe
What if he played knight takes pawn?
what if he goes knight takes pawn here, right? Knight a6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been the safest, I mean, wiser. Just take it and then play the same line, and then you don't have the a6 pawn and you win. But maybe there's a rook d4 idea here. And something like rook d8, maybe he didn't like bishop coming like this. Not so great, but okay, some ideas like h4, h5 in future. Like we can even start with h4, h5. But probably black is in time to get this, but still there are tricks like knight e4, you just capture. And okay, there could be some threats like h g6 and like this. So if you capture with this, then someday e6 would come. But okay, it's black is still better. We cannot deny the fact that black is up a pawn.
Yeah, that bishop g5 is kind of preventing the rooks from protecting each other, allowing some
Yeah, so
tactics.
that's something which is annoying for black, that he cannot improve the rooks and nor keep them defended. So instead, he went for knight e4, and bishop c3 was played. Not a big fan of this because now takes rook c8 doesn't look so good to me. You do have rook d4, rook c3, rook d5, rook c2, rook d7, winning something there. But okay, let's say if I start like this, it could be a problem for black. It could be a problem for white because this pawn is weak, this pawn is weak, and all of them are like isolated pawns. And imagine the king coming to e6 like this, let's say, in 3 moves, it will be game over for white. Because then black just doubles on c5 and gets the c pawns. Also, rook a5 is there. This could have been easier, probably the safest way for black to convert this end game.
Yeah. So bishop c3, mostly just trying to protect that pawn, but kind of leading to simplification in a bad way.
I would have just gone for rook takes e4. Rook c8, and now, okay, black does not take on c3, so white gets another chance, and he takes on e4, takes. Now the difference is, in the previous line, the pawn was on c4, so white had some space. Like the line I was discussing, we were just taking on e4 and then trying to get c4 immediately. For example, rook c8, and then we play c4 and we get bishop c3. But now the pawns are not so active, so someday there could be b5 and a6 will be lost. So probably this was the reason why black won this game. Okay, some tricks here for this move. Rook c6, the idea is just to defend the pawn. Probably with the 6 c7, because if you play 8 c7, then there's a check and e6 check. And as I said, b5 will come someday, and this will be a problem. That's what happened. And yeah, once the king comes near, it's game over. Just defend the d7 threat, and okay, white can resign.
So
More
well
or less
played.
on the points. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, well played by Daniel here because makes sense. Robert just kind of going for some dynamics at the end like he usually does, and a lot of times his opponents will blunder a tactic at the end. But Daniel just calling his bluff and went with the extra exchange, just
But
sidestepping threats on the dark squares.
definitely a very good game from Daniel. I mean, I really like the conversion part. He really played so well to convert this to playing knight c5, getting rook e to c6, then rook back to c7, trading the rooks, getting b5, and then this is pawn. And maybe even like this could have been even further better. But okay, he first went for the g4 pawn because white cannot really defend it. If you go king after there's a rook c4 and just push. So here, Robert decided to resign.
Nice.
Maybe
Perfect.
let's move to the next board.
We got Eddie Wasserman against Ralph Townsend, or
It's a
opposite
little
colors.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to understand how this position came. Looks very, very double-edged. Let's see from the beginning to understand this. Wow, it came from the Dutch defense.
Yeah, Eddie plays every opening under the sun, so he just decides what he's going to play that day, or sometimes specific opponents. He'll play certain
Yeah,
things, but yeah, Eddie plays solid and aggressive openings both. But interesting to
it's
see a Dutch game.
interesting. This is the Leningrad version of the Dutch, and a fighting line where both players are playing for a win. If I Many times they also play like rook e8, queen e8 ideas with a6, but usually those are with c6, knight d7 ideas. So Edward is playing his own variation of Dutch e5. So now maybe takes and some kind of bishop g5 could be annoying with knight coming to d5. But instead he played d5 and d7. And now the current position is like not really a Dutch, but a very, very good and updated version of the King's Indian, where black got e5, f5 without white c4, and also the knights are all set to attack on the king. This is like a upgrade version of King's Indian, achieved via Dutch because white played d4 anyway. Wow. So the point is if black takes like this, white just want to play knight g5 and put knight on e4, making use of the fact that he has got fiancé to bishop and a double attack, so there's no bishop f5. Same goes for something like takes with the pawn, knight g5, and you just capture. Now there's an extra threat of knight e6.
Nice.
So black just goes for the traditional f4. D takes f, e takes f, queen e1. I don't know how to call it, like it's a brave decision or a bad move, because you weaken the king, but at the same time you also give some threats, like you want to get e5 and some activities. But I believe for that, king needs to be on h1 and rook on g1.
Well, one
But okay,
question first. After every time, yeah, instead of playing e takes f4, I always wonder if I can just play like something like knight h5, knight takes f4.
yeah, moves like knight h5 looks great and typically possible oppositional pawn sacrifice. But on all those lines, such pawn sacrifices are good when the knight is on d7. So the point is, after takes, the knight should come like this: knight e5, knight e5, and bishop e5. But here the knight is misplaced, so you have to play d takes e5 because you cannot give the bishop. Like he just takes and bishop h6 and stuff. So d takes e5, and still it's a possible sacrifice. But when we see that the knight is not coming to e5, the queen is not coming easily, and more importantly, where the knight is going, then it becomes hard to justify the sacrifice. But it's still playable. I believe white can do knight e1, knight d3 ideas to get rid of the knight. So maybe not a good time to sacrifice and just play like this, because when you can just uh, play ef4 without losing material, like bishop f4, there's a knight e4 coming in. So you don't lose material as a black, so why to give a sacrifice? But yes, the idea of knight h5 is definitely the Fischer way, an interesting sacrifice, but recommended to make it when the knight is on d7.
Makes sense.
So in the game, ef4 was played, queen e1, knight g4, trying to get this pawn. Now g5, let me try to understand this. So knight g5, there's knight d5. Can white play knight h7? But then there's a queen h4 and check. And okay, there's h3. So let's just show to the viewers, knight g5, knight d5. And now, okay, if white just captures, black captures. So knight h7, let's say. We can play king h7 as a black, but there's also queen h4 here. Or maybe this is also good enough, king h7. Okay, white takes, whatever. And you just go f3. So this is also good enough for black. So that's why g5 was played, with the point that white cannot take on g5. f3 was played, knight e5. Again, very much simple idea, takes f3. This is very, very good for black. Now just the queen comes in, queen h5 next.
That light square bishop is a powerful pawn.
Yeah. White trying to run already. So the point is, after queen h5, there's something like rook f1 possibility, defending the h3 pawn. So black simply brings the knight. And now this is really good idea. You try to exchange the active piece of the bishop, but still it's very hard to get rid of. I mean, black will still control the dark squares. Okay, black just wants this. Rook h1, trying to do some threats on h5, let's say takes take, and maybe he wants rook h6 and some ideas like queen here, but there's a g3 and hardly looks it will work out. But okay, white needs to do something. And it worked out. Black played bishop f6. Black didn't go for g4. Maybe the dangerous line could be like queen g1 or something with queen g3, queen h2, but there's always g3, and if you take, there's something like f3 always possible. After capture, something like this. I was even wondering if black could do something like this. Just sacrifice everything. Because lots of checks are coming. King has to go like this, knight g3. Again, bishop g3 is there, rook f3 is there. Even something like this is possible. And it will be a checkmate soon. So looks very, very scary. There are so many options, but maybe after bishop g4, black can just go king, white can just go king e3 and run away. So it needs to be calculated very, very well. But in general, even if you just take on g4 with the bishop, it's winning for black. This is there, but
A nice attack by
it really
Eddie here.
works out. Yeah, it works out for black, but black played bishop f6. He just got scared because after g4, h8, g4, the h file gets opened. And maybe aiming to get knight to e5. King f1, queen e7. Hard to understand. Maybe bishop d7 was better option. Also, just try to get g4. f3 breaks. Mhm. So last 3, 4 moves, black just played like bishop f6, bishop b2, queen e7. So black did not really improve the position. That's why white is not losing anymore. Losing still, but not completely. Now
Yeah,
there are some moves like one, 2, 3.
he had a big attack brewing, but then kind of waffled.
What I would say is white has survived the worst. g4 is still possible,
Yeah, it's clear G4 is going to come at some point.
but now at least black can take and go. White can take and go knight d4 and try to hold on for some time. I know there's g3 coming in, but at least you don't lose or get checkmated. Like you can just try to hide here. So I think he's thinking. Oops, just a moment. Yeah. So this is the live position where Edward has opted for rook to f7. I don't know why he's not developing the bishop. Like the first thing you should do is just develop the bishop. Like he's doing every single thing, moving bishop back and forth, moving knight here and here, moving queen like this, rook, also the rooks, but not caring about the eighth rook.
He's somehow out on time though. Eddie's a time trouble addict, so must be relief that he's got an extra 15 minutes on rough here.
Yeah. So still black is doing well, better, let's say, but there's a game ahead. We have a result between Jeremy and Chris. We'll come back to this game later. As wait, what happened here? Okay,
That's not actually the G board.
okay, got it.
You can skip that one.
So let's just focus on this. Now we'll go to the open section where one game was already finished. Jeremy won against Chris, and we'll see this game later maybe because we have got 3 games running on apart from this, and we can see Andrew against Kevin here.
Yep. So these games are just coming down to the critical moments here at the very end of the game, but I think most of the people are just going to be watching the replay anyways. So should we just go from the beginning?
Ah, wow.
Yes, Andrew, every game he's a Polish man. So,
Yeah.
yep, this is the second time you've seen it from him. We already gave him the Magnus lecture, so he didn't take that to heart. I think we're just gonna have to deal with it.
And okay, this d5 was, I mean, white needs to start with rook here, knight c5, knight c6. But okay, here he plays c4, trying to, because this is interesting move, because if we just play like this, then black simply has rook here, c5, knight c6, and kicks the bishop. So c4 is interesting. Now black needs to decide if he captures, then he loses control over center. And if he does not capture, then CD5 he needs to be answered. So C5, CD5, 95, maybe 25 is also possible, but okay. Always develop your knights before everything else, like 27. Just do this, and then maybe 27 if you like, because this gives no threat. And
Yep.
now it's white who's giving the first threat.
Knights before bishops, castle your king. Can't go wrong with those principles.
Yeah. And now unnecessarily there is some weakness here already.
Yeah, light square is looking a little bit scary. At least black doesn't have a pawn on e6, so maybe he can get his bishop in at some point to help defend. But
Okay, some ideas like E4, but A3 will be played. Ah, what? No A3 was played. Wow.
yeah, so he's want to get his last piece developed, but not totally recognizing the
Um,
counter threats.
or maybe he just calculated this line very, very well that he can do this, and just move the queen. There's no G6, there's F5, but I don't know how good is this. The bishop looks very, very awkward on it, G6. I understand you cannot play G6 or win bishop immediately, but very soon it will be a problem. Though there are some moves like this, but I don't recommend something like this. Like, I mean, don't calculate all this, just play A3. I mean, there is just no other option, right? Just
Yeah,
defend the B4. There's still rook B8 with the idea of knight B4,
and
but
he's
maybe now you
forecasting he
can.
wants the knight before too, just dropping the bishop back for no reason. So he's clearing that square. He wants to play knight before. That's why, yeah, very
And
important just to ask yourself what was my opponent's idea of their last move. Could probably see that thread a little bit easier asking yourself that question.
I'm really surprised to see knight f6 back. Like when you option to go forward with both the knights, with literally no threats on the king, why on the earth you go knight f6 back? Just to prevent this check?
Yeah, it looks that way. You need to take your opportunity to fork that queen and bishop.
No, not so good. So castle knight before, and he ends up getting the bishop, so now he's again better. Okay, fair enough. Now why this capture unnecessarily? He could have simply gone or taken here or bishop b8 back. And there's lots of pressure along this file, like simply b5 might come, cd4 might come. I like black like way like so much.
Yeah, everything looks in harmony.
And black gives up the bishop. Because he has spotted a tactic with cd4, I believe he wants to just get this. If I press rook d4, knight d4, or any capture. So he gets a pawn there, but I would have kept the bishops. Again, I would have liked to keep the queens on the board because the king is weak. Simply bishop b6 could come at some point. I could attack this, so even queen e8 is fine.
Yeah,
If not, queen e6.
from that perspective, do you think maybe you should have thought about queen takes c3 instead of f takes?
Yeah, but yeah, something like this is definitely could have been the better option because you at least exchange queens and you eliminate the chance of getting checkmated in the middle game. And also you give a first threat as white to attack them, attack, take it, and make the structure damaged. There's still 94 and stuff like this. Very, very difficult position in general, but
Yeah,
okay.
because I'm just seeing if I play f takes, my king safety is getting compromised anyways. So then I kind of would rather trade the queens. If
Definitely. I mean, that's the best move, no doubt about it. At least you try to hit queens and try to survive in the end game because middle game anyway you have very, very little chance. Just the bishop goes back and queen comes here. What you will do later on.
Yeah, and you could
It tries.
I could see he probably want he's down a pawn. That's probably why he wants to avoid it. But it's
Yeah,
pawn's not always lethal. Um, but yeah, you can see he's probably playing off the principle. If you're down material, avoid piece trades.
yeah, another fair strategy. If you have clear strategy in the mind, like you don't need to think about all these possibilities. You can just trade pieces and convert. But you need to be clinical or technical while doing this. So let's see. Okay, so now again he goes to activate some pieces like this in this fashion, preventing knight f5. But for rook f6, I believe the point is after rook f6, rook f1, there's 92. So there's no rook f1, which means again white will be having some new problems to deal with. Okay, I'm not gonna explain this more. It's just terrible.
Well, I feel like when this is actually a common thing you can take advantage of in your own games is a lot of players lower rated if they don't know what's going on in a certain position they just push a pawn. It's kind of their default
Team.
default. I'm not sure what's going on, not sure what to do next, but let me just push a pawn. But pawns don't move backwards, so if you're not sure what's going on, yeah, I guess he is trying to anchor knight f5.
But even let's
But
say something like 25, and it just checkmate, like takes 23, and it's game over.
but this is actually a good strategy, I think, to win a practical endgame too. If you're a lot better, is you can kind of just wait around a little bit, and sometimes your opponent will just ruin their own position. They'll push their pawns and make their king even weaker, and then those pawns become weaknesses. And yeah, you can kind of take your extra pawn position and just turn it into an easy conversion rather than take decisive action yourself to start. But depends.
D6 was played. Maybe he did not spot the queen e5, or maybe he just wants to prevent knight f5 in any way. So a prophylactic move instead of accurate or aggressive. It just checkmate, right? There's no way to prevent queen g3. Again, surprising not played in the game. Again, there's a rook f2 here, and it's just mate in 2 or 3. But instead, he played g6. And okay, in the end, rook f2 was again possible, but okay, he went for rook f3. So if queen g2, there's a rook g3. Aha.
Ah, nice.
Why do you capture queens?
Oh, I thought he might have had a knight fork there. Miscalculator.
Kevin had like still 5, 6 minutes left on the clock. Even if you would have thought for 2 more minutes, it was just game over. Like just queen g3 and or just capture everything. Like, but not trade pieces. Like at least do rook g3 or something. Then try to bring the other rook or anything is fine. But and we have this position on the board.
And so what's the eval here?
Of course,
Or
black is still winning because he's up a pawn. But now white can play rook b3, try to survive, make some threats, something. It's not game over instantly because the knight is pretty strong here. So black needs to work out a new plan maybe, or play a game where he will have to create a pass pawn slowly. So this will go long. Let's move to the next board. Meanwhile, we have a result between Basil and Hua. We left it around here. Talking about the endgame conversion, he did get rook d3, he did play king g7 and everything. He even gave the pawn because after that there's a checkmate here. And it was, I think, clean conversion. Just take all the pawns. And yeah, that's all.
So yep, looks like this one just kind of decided by skewer blunder, um, but well played by Michael. A nice start to the
Okay,
tournament on board one.
okay, let's maybe just keep on watching the live games. We have Michael and Thomas.
Perfect. We got Mitchell against Thomas here. Yep.
Sorry, Michelle and Thomas.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched this game at all yet, so why don't we go from the start and see what happened here.
So it was Sicilian.
Open Sicilian. These guys are brave. Okay. Oh, smash with
No
knight
knight
f3.
d5, knight
Yep,
f5.
knight b5 is definitely the move, but it's got to get. I think knight f3 they can. Oh yeah, no. Knight f5 is where they play d5, so knight f3 pretty chill.
Maybe white black can start with d5 directly.
Yeah, no. I was thinking when they jump knight f5, you have to play d5, but knight
Uh-huh.
f3, this is pretty chill. I play Svesh myself, but not a total expert.
Yeah. And and okay, both of them managed to get a playable position. Definitely black has equalized long back and doing well. But white also has something to attack, some problems to solve. So a balanced game, I would say. Okay, generally it's good better to play f6 and just say no more attacks here. But currently this was a pin and maybe he felt not so comfortable. For example, let's say white can play knight e4. For bishop e6, there's knight c3 and one may lose a piece because after knight c3 there's a check and then white captures back. So this was a problem maybe, and that's
And
why
if I
bishop
what
f6
what
played.
about knight f4?
Yeah. So f6, knight e4, bishop here, knight c3, knight f4. And you do defend the knight because bishop f4, you have got bishop c4 and takes, maybe knight d5 again. It's fine maybe for black, you can play like this, but white also gets a strong knight. So that's why maybe he just went for bishop f6, saying no to all these possibilities, which allows knight e4 though. And okay, lost bishop there. Okay. So far, decent and logical moves from both the sides. Okay, now for instance, there's no need to move the knight because there's no threat. White can continue h5, h6, or something like rook e3 and some ideas. Just for instance, let's say rook e3, he plays king h8. Sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes there's a possibility of rook f3, you take, and there's a rook f5 followed by rook h5. Not here, maybe because still, let's say he can play queen e6 and there's no this move. But sometimes it could be a possibility to even sacrifice like this. Or you can always come back and then again try to remaneuver the knight. But at least white should wait for black to go king h8 or something.
Nice attacking idea.
Now f5 is being threatened. And g5. And suddenly it's black who is attacking or having the initiative there because of white's poor piece placement. The rook is not active yet. The bishop is not doing much. And that short pawn is being attacked multiple times. one thing I thought was knight h7, king h7, and something like h5. So the point is after take, maybe sometime you can just capture because of the pin. Or for instance, if there's a queen c3, you can just capture, and go queen g4. Possibilities, but I believe there's a better defense for black. He can just maybe play takes, because if g5 again, queen g4 is there, maybe e4 is also possible. And there's nothing much. Because otherwise it just lost. He's losing every single thing. Even this now. He gets h5, some pressure here. Oh wait, what? And suddenly the attack is working out in favor of white, because there's a queen h7 and it's almost impossible to defend. But maybe h6. Okay, the point is this. Ooh.
Nice.
So finally the Michelle had the last laugh, I would say, so far. Out of all this messy moves from both sides, he went queen b4 to get the pawn, and then the h5 becomes so strong suddenly. It was never coming because the rook was on g4. So maybe h6 here or something would have been better option, but h6 also there's this 96 idea.
Well, I can't say I'm totally shocked because it does kind of seem like tempting fate to go pawn grabbing when white is lining up pieces for an attack. Seems like maybe you want to get some of those knights
Maybe
back, get some of those knights back to the king side before you go for the queen side invasion.
I just found an interesting idea, maybe knight d5. Now the f2 pawn is hanging. If you take, at least you have queen f2 or rook f2 coming in, and you can grab more material. If not, knight f4. So let's say if queen g3, you can just grab material, and if queen g4, you can maybe start with rook. Or queen f2, king moves, and some ideas like this. But there are some checks there to be taken care of. King h8, queen e8, king here, knight e7. Maybe it's not a big deal. Just play king g7 and you have got this. But then knight comes to e6. You think black is winning, but then e6 and it's over for black. So yeah, I mean, if you don't have pawn near your king, then you're having bad king, or or one has the problem related to king safety, and that's what we can see here. So maybe knight f4 directly or something like that, or maybe just start with king h8. But then still white is better if he plays rook f1 or something. But in the game, it happened very, very terrible. Like he has to give the f7 rook. Simply queen came inside. Maybe rook d6 was possible. King f7, and then something like rook d7. I was wondering because
Ah,
this is
nice,
spin, and this would lead to some checkmating ideas.
nice tactics.
But in the game, bishop f1 was played, which is also fair enough. Just trying to keep it simple. But then you drop some pawns which you don't trade. Okay, why not this? Come on.
Yeah, it's the
He
rook
just
with tempo.
But okay, you need to attack the rook. But okay, maybe he thought he'll just play rook d1 and create more trouble. So he captured the a2, e4, z4. Oh. Might give lots of counterfeit to black, I would say. Now he wants to do something like this, maybe. Wow. And I believe now it's probably, not probably, game over for black because after rook g3, queen h8 is a checkmate. So king g5 turns out to be a big blunder. And now this is a mate. We don't have f4 even. The knights
Yep.
are terrible in the corner, connecting each other.
Just closing the door behind him. So, yep, chess is cruel. one bad move, and you find yourself in a mating net.
Yeah. So probably game over for black here after this point. And looks like Thomas has realized that and he's thinking, taking a bit of time, but he could have done that here, try to generate some threats with knight d5 or something. Okay, you lose the knight, but at least you have a perpetual idea. For instance, queen c8, knight e3, we can have check, 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 and try to make a draw like this. I know there are lots of checks like queen d8, queen h8 at times for knight e3, but you have to take the chances because if you, even if you don't get this, you'll get some pawns and you can try to survive. Or for queen d6, you can play king e5, and this makes more sense than going to g5. It's okay to be brave, but we need to know, when to be brave or which side uh, we need to go.
It's some nice practical advice.
This was not really a good idea. And now, probably, I think he missed queen g5, queen e5 idea with the rook g3 coming in. But now it's too late. He's already planning queen sacrifice. Or probably resign, I don't know. Let's just have a look at the last board where Steven's playing against Vincent, who's down to 2 minutes for Steven. Position looks equal. Let's just quickly see, go through this game. It was Alekhine defense. Asymmetrical structure we got. Okay. So usually, okay, just play 95 is the theme, but they also play bishop f3 if they want knight c4, 93. He went for that idea. Ah, but he missed this 95. This was even better idea. Instead of playing this, you get both the bishops by playing 95. Knight 6 e5, I mean.
Cool.
Now he gets only one, but he gets the pawn. Ah, okay. He gets this, he gets this. He gets this, he gets this. So he went rook d1, bishop f6. But now we cannot easily capture the pawn because let's say takes, takes, takes. Apart from queen b7, there's also queen g4 to be worried about. So he did not get the pawn. He could have, if he could have calculated well, he could have simply got it here. Both the bishops, and then it's very good for black. Instead, he went for this. And now suddenly white is better because black has really played awkward moves like this. Now the king is weak again. Defense both. H3 is fine. 4, d6. Lots of crazy stuff happened in this game, and in the end, they reached something like this, a symmetrical position, where Steven now it's down to, like he spent like 20 minutes literally from here this point, like AB6, he spent like 5 minutes for this. After rook e6, I don't know why he was taking so long. 5 minutes for next move, and okay, again, getting low on time.
Yeah, if you see anyone
But
flag, it's probably DGT or
maybe.
pretty rare anyone actually flags. All right, I believe we skipped over board 5. Should we go through that game quick?
Sure. So objectively, it's a draw.
Oh, let's finish this one first.
Where they will exchange pieces. But let's go to maybe this board between Kevin and
I believe it was more between Chris and Jeremy. This was the Polish we went.
Christian Germany, yeah. That's already over, yeah.
Yeah, it's over, but we never covered it, so let's just go
Oh,
through it.
sorry, yeah. So let's cover this game as well between Jeremy and Kale and Chris. So C4, E6, knight C3, D. Okay, knight F6. So here black has lots of options to go Queen's Gambit, to go something like Nimzo-Indian, or try to go like F5 Dutch. He kept the Nimzo-Indian option. He opted Nimzo-Indian. Bishop B4, G3, C5. This is all good theory. Castle, knight C6, A3. They play later on so that they don't damage the pawn structure. They want to capture with the queen. D6, A3, and now bishop just goes back. These all three, even here, rook D1 is possible with the idea of D4. But now for rook D1, black simply has E5. So D3 was played. So if E5, maybe some kind of bishop G5 is possible. Many times they also play H6 just to prevent that idea. But it's not that a big problem when you go pawn on E6 because even after this, you can play H6. And there's no D5 hold. I'm not sure why bishop C7 because white is not really threatening this. Black can continue either H6 or E5 ideas. Bishop C7 allows B4. Probably the first reason why black lost this. And again, this is, I'm not sure about, this is like very, very dangerous. Like at least you can do knight E5 stuff. D5 was played. And oh, come on. This is just a blunder. This was recommended, takes knight B5 or something like this. And okay, now you need to defend this whatever, like no matter how good or bad it is. But knight D4 is just giving away the rook.
Yep.
One more tactic
and,
missed.
and look at that time spent. So not much excuse there. It's classical
Very good
chess.
point.
Classical chess. You can't be playing that fast.
I, I thought it was a classical game, but Chris was just playing the blitz.
Yeah.
Complete
But
130
I'm
on the clock.
sure I'm sure he's going to take this game to heart though and slow down next week because
Definitely.
blunder like that will make me take my time at least. But it happens to the best of us. Chess is cruel.
Yeah. And still he keeps on blitzing on. Like even after losing the exchange, he plays
Yeah, well,
D5 instantly. It's a good move, but maybe he could have thought of it a bit more. I mean, to take on D5 first or just like to moment.
well, once you're losing on the board, you gotta play for clock pressure,
Okay.
right? So
I think now it's good.
yeah, I think we're lagging a little bit, but
So the point was after Queen C3 with this moment.
yeah, but as far as Chris continuing to move fast, once you're down,
Is it good?
yeah, we can see it. Once you're down a
So
full
yeah, I was
rook,
talking about.
go ahead.
So here there was an option to take on B5 first and to go D5. So maybe black would have thought a bit about taking here first or going D5 directly, but he instead just went D5. Now this move, D4, Queen C1. And A5. Okay. Now H6 is a good idea, at least get the bishop. But he went for the pawn attack. Okay, in the end he got the bishop.
Can you back up just a little bit? What do
Fair
you think?
enough.
What do you think about E3? I feel like,
That was a bad,
yeah, I feel like
like
that bishop
you
was
can do it.
the bishop was suppressed already and stuff, and you got a nice pawn chain. So
Or you try to play f4, fe5, and try to trade bishops and get queen to f4. Because of h6, you have got this more. You can just capture on f6. So
yeah, e3
maybe
kind
try
of.
to break with f4. Usually e3 is okay, but
It's just
in
kind of
this
making
position,
the
not
d3
really.
weakness out of nowhere.
Yeah, you lose bishop if you play e3.
But I guess grasping at straws when you're already up a rook. So not
Yeah,
too
he
much.
tried to open a 5 with e3. Sorry, yeah.
No, that's all.
Something to play for black. You got two bishops. Maybe some ideas like this. This is really bad, putting your rook in the closed file. I understand black needs to develop the rook, but it's not really developing because you don't do much there. In future, white is going to make double on e file and try to trade pieces. So maybe rook is better on f8. Maybe something like h5, h4 is a good idea here. If he plays h4, then okay, at least he creates some weaknesses here. But maybe you can start with bishop h3 or bishop g4 and then try to get this. But instead he went rook d8. And now, yeah, he has no chance. Just rook will be double done. Okay, too late. It's good with the bishop here, but without the bishop, it's not going to lead anywhere. Sacrifice another pawn to open the h file, but as I said, it's not going to lead to anywhere. One by one, he dropped all the pawns. Okay. So finally managed to trade off queens and d4 as well, I believe. Because if rook h8, there's a rook d8. So okay, so he just played few more moves before resigning. And Jeremy won a nice game against Chris.
Nice, well played by Jeremy. And looks like Chris made some chances for some counterplay, but just got a little too far behind in the start with the exchange blunder. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing these players next week. Hopefully,
Meanwhile, we do
hopefully
have
see
some
Chris slow down a little bit.
uh, okay, Miles was supposed to win. He won. Uh, Daniel has won.
Yeah,
Robert.
yeah, we saw that.
Oh, okay, yeah. And yeah, that's and okay. Michelle won against. Okay, we saw this as well. So let's stick to the live board between Edward and Ralph.
Yep, Eddie always goes down to the wire, has dramatic games.
Just a minute here for the white player, Ralph. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Sorry, guys, I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
that great with the pronunciation with your names. I'm
you,
learning.
you're doing good.
Maybe very soon I'll get better.
Yep, Ralph's perfect.
So we left it around here and we talked that black is doing well. Black could have finished off the game, but why he did not do it correctly. So he did get some chances. Now the best thing would be just to put king here and then go queen h7 so that you don't face any problems. Okay, takes 95. This is also good enough. Just block it. And okay, I would have liked much more to go queen h2 first and then bishop h3. But okay, bishop h3 also serves the purpose as he cannot take on h3. Queen g1 is forced. And now something like queen h5 is simply okay, but this hangs. Maybe take and queen h2 wins. Knight f4, the point is knight d3. So this is a tactical point. So after
Nice.
takes, there's a 2, and if king moves, knight f4. But he needs to find it. If queen moves, then g2 simple. Or there's also knight d3. But king f1, we need to figure out something. Maybe even this is good enough. And now the king comes in, and black will grab the pawns. And the king cannot be improved because knight controls everything.
Yep, looking pretty strong for black.
There's also a possibility. Let's see how he plays. He has got 16 minutes. He's thinking.
We can also check out board 6 live.
Yeah. Also, one more idea is to just go back and try to play c6. But let's move to Kevin versus Andrew. Wow. So lots of things happened since we left it. So this was a mate, and then okay, black misplayed a bit and got a winning endgame. And yeah, so probably he got some pawns around there. Okay, exchange rooks, good enough.
It's a lot of pawns.
Yeah, lots of pawns, like 3 pawns up is too much. And with side passes, like the rook pawns are the pass pawns, so the biggest enemy of knights are here.
Yep, edge pawns can't. Knights can barely stop edge pawns, especially if they get to the 6th rank. They're almost unstoppable.
Yeah, so it's
But
going to win
yeah,
for Kevin.
this one's going to be straightforward. Perfect, no drama there. And then I guess we also have board 8 still alive.
I think there's some problem with the transmission here because
Okay. Yeah, it's just
we
stop
left it
transmitting.
around this point and it's not getting updated.
Sure. Yep, that
Let's take,
happens fairly often.
uh,
So yeah, let's stick with Eddie's game.
yeah, because this game is like I believe it's over. Kevin is like away ahead or too many pawns up. So let's see if uh Ralph can find this queen h2. Oh no, he played 93. But
93 on
again,
the
like
board.
for example, sorry, if he
Oh,
plays
okay.
king, he can also play like queen h2. So it's a different model, but the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for king f1, there's a beautiful queen f6 coming in.
It's looking pretty good for black here.
Yeah. King d1, okay. So how is going to defend for queen h2? Queen g1, only move. And the funny part is even he can play queen f2. And now we cannot take here because simply ef2 queens.
But what's the threat if you pass the move?
So queen h1 and some ideas there, but simply king g7 and now g2 is a possibility next. This is a queen g1, then you start capturing pawns. For instance, king d2, you play g2, queen g1 or something, you just start capturing those pawns.
Nice.
The live board position is this, where Edward is thinking if queen h2 or some kind of a queen f6, queen h8. I believe. I
All
don't
right.
see any other move.
Well, this is the last board live, but we only have 15 minutes left in the broadcast. So why don't we just go ahead and do a recap, and then we'll
Uh,
just jump back to this board finish. Then we got the recap done.
sure. So yeah, I think this game we covered where Basil played a really fantastic game in Kaukan. Okay, so inaccuracies in the opening about the piece placements and bishop g6 thing and g6. But overall, a very good game where he just took advantage of the white's mistakes and converted with a very good technique. About uh, the Miles and Agam, I think it was a giveaway from Agam, I would say rather. Like he unnecessarily, okay, he had got decent position to play from the opening. He also got this. And now simply Queen E2 was supposed to be needs to be played. There's a bishop a6 there. Maybe not so easy here, but just move the queen to some square where you don't lose bishop for free, like in some discord attack. Like this happened, and he was doing good, but Miles was putting sets from so long time from the opening itself, some tricky moves, and in the end, again fell for it, winning material and the game. Here also we found that if he could have played bishop e2, rook d1 ideas, some he could have prolonged the game a bit, but he just blundered after bishop c2 f3. And Miles was always alert to spot those tactics. He did miss. He did not miss a mate, but uh, maybe not so accurate in conversion. But he was still a lot of material up, so winning. Yeah, just locked down. Now next move is ns2 even.
Nice.
About Daniel and Robert. Yeah, this was about Scandi. A very good game by Daniel here. Only move I did not like was this, giving up the bishop. Otherwise, everything was pretty much good. And yeah, if he could have directly taken here, I would have been appreciated more. But he played rook c8 and then allowed this chance to white, after which it should be a draw. But now we see that there's no c4. If he could have taken here itself, then this was the important point, like takes, and now we have something like c4 so that the b5 does not come in any of the lines. You just put like this and you're pretty solid. So this was the key point, I think. After this, okay, it was just a win for black. Again, good technique here to go back, come back to c6, timely play b5.
Yeah, and Robert's a very strong in-game player, so that's nice conversion by Daniel.
Yeah, very well played by Daniel there. Talking about, okay, we just discussed this game between Chris and Jeremy. Which was interesting in general. Some threats for both the sides. But Jeremy was more precise, so he won. And everything was decided about this blunder. So now, if no knight d4, it could have been more challenging game, more fighting game. Just knight anywhere. Maybe knight e7 is more precise, and you don't lose material. If knight e5 or something, just play rook b8, and there's no fork here. Knight captures back. But knight d4 is a big blunder because you just give the rook. And okay, good conversion by Chris there. Okay, this was also a very good game by Michel. Which came from a little bit different kind of Sicilian where right goes back. So, but what I would say is a good middle game play by Michel here. And about Steven versus Vincent, do we have result of this game or it just
Yeah,
not brought up?
this is where we lost. We can recap up till where the DGT cut out. Not exactly
And
sure
it
the
was
final
Alekhine,
result
so
here. Sorry about that.
okay, yeah. So it was Alekhine defense and interesting or entertaining opening at least. But maybe the more entertaining line would be CD6 G6 idea, where black plays for more critical lines. ED6 takes ED is more of a like exchange what we call it French or very symmetrical positions. So the position remains kind of dry in this, but if you are a real elegant player, you should take like this and try to play bishop g7 and something like this. Talking about, okay, then it was symmetrical thing and we lost the feed. So let's stick to the live board, I believe.
Perfect. Thanks for the recap. I'm also just going to mention our sponsor here quick for a moment. So we do have a sponsor on the channel, chessgoals.com. So we have a local national master, Matt Jensen. He owns a company called chessgoals.com. They create simple opening courses for non-grandmasters, learn complete repertoires in under 100 lines. So these are videos, PGNs, and a ton of written text with the PGNs. And you also get access to a private Discord where Matt answers all your questions. I actually bought one of the courses myself, the Catalan course, and I'm in the Discord. I see him in there answering everyone's questions. So, yeah, if you're looking for just some pretty simple club level opening repertoires, check out chessgoals.com. And if you do make any purchases there, use code CASTLE to save 30%.
So guys, it's chess goals, something which you need to use to move ahead in chess. And yeah, once again, big thanks to the sponsors for supporting the game of chess and the club.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it takes a lot to put this all together. Thanks to our new bear as well. Appreciate you commentating all night here. We're all learning a lot from your commentary here, and I know the players are excited to check out the replay and see what you had to say about their games.
And okay, so something like this happened in the game. Now the pawn is just winning. There's a knight here. So knight might capture the pawn, but then this pawn will decide it. So knight d3 simply next. And interesting that he did not push a pawn because then there's a knight c3 again. But this was a good deflection tactic he could have used here to win instantly. Takes and b2. And this is a forced win. There's no fork coming in. And there's no king on d5 or e4. So it just wins on the spot.
Yeah,
But he missed it.
similar to knight d3 deflection in Eddie's game. Should we
Yeah.
see? Should we see how that's closing out?
He goes king e5. Okay, just want to keep it like this maybe. But there's a king f3. There's going to be b2 knight c3 now. And some more work needs to be done. And probably that's why he's thinking. And Andrew has 15 minutes, so he has got a lot of things. I mean, a lot of time to make some tricky lines for Kevin, who is drawn to with just a minute. I think it will be interesting. There will be some tricks. Let's see.
Yeah, I think Black's gonna convert that one, but never know.
King f3 on the board. If king comes so near, it won't be that easy.
All right, let's check out board four though, because that's kind of coming to its finale.
Yeah. I forgot about this board, that this board is also going on. So king d1, queen h2, he found queen g1. And I was talking about this simply queen f2 idea, which does not allow queen d4. So queen f2, simply queen h1, and you go king g7, and it's over. Because queen cannot go up anywhere because you have got check, and probably mate there. So he went king g7, which allowed this check. And now he was so scared that he played knight. Okay, knight was hanging, of course, so he played knight e5. But now knight f4 is possible. He lost a pawn, and it's a game now. Come back for Ralph in the end game.
And is g2 not a serious threat?
It's a threat, yes. but maybe he can just go back to e2 and there's nothing after that. So it was recommended to keep the king on g8. Like you don't keep your king on f8 so that there's anything like queen d4 or something comes. Just keep king on g8. So there are no problems on this diagonal, not this file. And then start doing all this, whatever you want to do. Like then you start knight b3 or anything. Just first put the king on g8, or as I said, the best square for king is on b8. You don't need king to win this. You can just win with the help of g pawn and back two pieces. But black did not take care of this thing, and which is now backfiring. And a beautiful game is about to get ruined here if he does not win this. But okay, queen f3 is there. So
Still
still,
a game, but I did turn the eval on for a second. It's showing minus 3.5. So looks like it's still pretty dominant for black here.
yeah, but you don't. I mean, what happens when we play practically? Let's say you capture everything, you're still good. Because for machines, you know what happens? For machine, the pawn is getting queen and knight is getting dropped. That's why it's +3. But for human, it's not clear that how this pawn is going to queen. Like you need to bring queen, king, move knight to which spot, which spot. It's difficult for human to figure out, especially with the less time. And when you play moves like 95, like 10 times in a game, like because you just got scared of queen coming somewhere, queen coming somewhere. We saw 95 coming so many times. Whenever the queen goes to this diagonal, he plays 95. So he's really scared of uh, queen coming inside. So when you are scared, it's really hard to make progress. So, and now he plays queen e3. Let's see.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common error. I make myself too. We want to keep everything under total control, suppress all counterplay, don't let opponent have any counter chances. But in classical chess, sometimes you just got to calculate lines and just say, well, that's not going to be really a real threat anyways, because I'll just mate him if he tries to get his queen in.
Now also g2 is possible. Like if it takes, just take and make a queen. So for g2, there's knight e2. And now again, you need to figure out that how you're going to control this square. If you take again, you win. But if it doesn't take, then are you just going to bring the king or are you just going to do something else? The question still remains. Because if you go back now, there are lots of checks coming in. So
Yeah, and we can yep, and look, we can see the clock starting to pop up here. It's getting down to crunch time. Both players under a minute, or Ralph a minute 30, Eddie done under a minute now.
yes, interesting. Both players down to a minute.
So now we got a real blitz cam.
And meanwhile, just 10 seconds for Kevin here. He's still figuring out how to win this.
30-second increment here though. We shouldn't see either player.
91 played at 5 seconds. And now the idea is pretty obvious that he wants to go like this. But so, okay, if it's simple, if it goes up, just you go like this and it will be a game over with the bit like this. So you cannot really stop black from winning. But what if he goes this side of the board? Let's say we left it around here. And what if he goes to this side of the board? Because anyway, now you have to go like this or like this. And after you make a queen, then the king goes to capture the pawn like this. So still some threads and some works needs to be done. Meanwhile, queens got traded here. He went king f6. And very soon he might just drop the pawn as well because I don't see how he's going to stop knight h5. So for sure, black is not winning this anymore.
Wow, big turnaround. So brutal for Eddie here,
Yeah.
but well played by Ralph to turn this around and kind of.
So still technically both the games black is winning, but they still need to figure out how they're going to win this because they are really down to 30 seconds.
Yeah, and these are played with 30-second increments, so these could get
Now it's going to be white who's going to be an upper pawn here.
These could get pushed on a while longer.
Yeah.
Um,
King e3, knight g5, and just still it's a draw after take, because the black king is very, very active. But now it's white who's going to try to play this to win this. Maybe knight f5, knight d4, knight d6, or knight b5 is a good winning idea. So now it's black who needs to be precise to hold this. This is the live position. Okay, let's stick to this. So yes, he played king e2. He's not giving up swap by going up. He's gonna remain here. He's gonna hang around there. So king d3, knight here, knight d2 is going to be played.
all right. Well, we are at the end of the broadcast time. I think we will hang on for maybe 5 more minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just see if these games conclude. But kind of 5 minute warning for the audience here.
So king
These
b,
games got 30-second increments, so they can go super late, especially
especially the Ralph versus Edward, because
night
he's
game.
gonna try. This is the moment for Ralph to play for something. Whole game he defended, defended, defended.
Yep.
So this is his moment. He fixes the pawn, takes.
Okay. Well, they're
Don't know
playing.
in whose favor. The the player who's gonna capture the first probably gonna win. I could
Yeah.
see this knight jumping like this.
And they don't really have time to calculate this stuff perfectly. So this is going to be interesting.
It's kind of a zigzag. Like black has no good move. Like he cannot touch the c pawn. It's in person, and he needs to move either king and knight. If he has to move the king or knight, then he loses attack on this. So he can just play knight f5, knight d4, or something like knight e2, knight d4, or knight c3 e1. Now black is aiming to get this checks and try to survive. So even knight h5 becomes a possibility, so that after knight g5 you can go knight f4, and for knight e4 you have got this move. And c5 you are just in time to make this in person, so that you have got this move, and c7, c8 next. So even like this possible, let's see how he plays that. Meanwhile, let's see if Kevin is converting this. So instead of, okay, knight c2, I was wondering of this move, king d3, because then you keep the king a little bit in the corner and also you go up. But instead he went for this. Now a difficult decision for Kevin to decide between these two options. He went like this. So okay, let's calculate. King d3, b1, takes, king f5, king e4, sorry. Can he defend this pawn? Looks difficult to me. Knight b4, okay. King f5, knight c6, king d. Okay, he's winning. Knight d8. He needs to find out everything like this, like king d3, b1 queen, takes. Let me just show it quickly.
And you
So
want
knight b4, king f5, knight c6, king goes back, and now knight d8.
you
So this
want
is
the
the winning line which Kevin needs to find, and for this we have just this.
and the knight behind behind the pawn almost, so they can't just attack the knight and the pawn at the same time. But
I don't think here Andrew has much option but to just try to go up. So that's why I was saying, here black is just winning by one move. So for example, here if you just play king d3, you end up making draw. Because now the difference is knight is not well placed. And b1 just capture and king here and just capture the pawn. But maybe this knight c4 idea, deflection idea still wins for black. So maybe king d4 is the way going forward. Maybe black is still winning, but at least it becomes trickier for black to find moves. Okay,
Interesting.
knight is coming to b5 here. It's whose move? It's white's move. So they played 92, knight f6, knight c3, knight back. Knight b5 will be played. Knight c5 will be played. He will capture first. He will capture. Looks still drawish to me, but we never know.
Yeah, they can always sack that knight for the last pawn.
King d3 played and Kevin down to 8 seconds. Will he find b1? And the idea of going back with the knight. Yes, he did play b1. Probably he found the idea of going back.
Looks like Kevin's got a chance to win here.
Yeah. He's gonna think a bit here. So let's just quickly look at this. What these people are doing. So let's talk about knight b5, knight c5, knight here. And what if Edward tries to win a game with knight a4? Possible. He can quite do that because, as I said, the a pawns are the biggest enemies of knight. And that's what he's thinking of. Like, what if he captures on a4? How I'm going to stop that pawn? And
King
that's why he's not playing this.
King might help.
You can always make a draw just by coming back. No issues. But as a white, being a pawn up, you want to try something.
Yeah, especially after you suffered all game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, he went for knight b5. Now, if black really wants to play for a win, he can play knight b6, not allowing to go back knight, and he gets this pawn. So he can force, black can force actually
Yeah.
this moves like knight c7, knight a4. And the king is really, really strong. Knight needs to be here to kick the king, but it's very hard that knight could get to the squares. So again, it's going to be interesting battle there. Meanwhile, he has found this, which means he has also found this.
He played knight b6.
Aha, game on. Knight f4, knight. Wait, what? Did he play king d3 here? Ah, no. Now this is not good. He can just capture the e4 as well. But okay, still it's a draw. If the king just goes like this, it's going to be a draw. But now again, black has some chances.
Yeah, this looks drawn. This is going to be drawn.
So king c3, there's king e4, knight e4 ideas. He can simply put knight on b5, keep attack on this guy, and just put king on a3, and it's a draw.
So back and forth one there.
And Andrew's still figuring out if he could do something like this to win a pawn. But he's very, very far from making it. A good calculation towards the end by Kevin, I would say, to seal full point.
Yeah, and Eddie and Ralph are still building a bunch of time here. Looks like they're headed towards a draw. But I think we're going to call it here for tonight.
All right.
So thank you guys so much for viewing. Thanks, Nubair, for commenting. If you guys really do want to see the very end of Ralph versus Eddie, you can always check it out on the Chess Castle website. So just go chesscastle.com, click Games Broadcast, and the very top link has a live link to the DGT games, so you can see the live status of any game. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Either myself and Nubair, or it might be Connor Weatherly hosting alongside Nubair if Connor is able to come. So yeah, but we'll definitely be back next week. So thanks for everyone viewing, and see you next week, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.